Welcome to our very first true Spaulding Feature in the lifestyle interview. We've actually done other videos in the past with really amazing performances here in Central Ontario from different artists, different musicians. And this is our first lifestyle communication because I have a really talented, resilient, and very amazing young lady here in the studio, Christene Bell. Her story is phenomenal. So it's probably going to be cut up into 4 different, if not 5 segments, and you got to stay for all 5. So tell us a little bit about you. You are a nurse.
I am a nurse, so I've been a nurse for about 7 years.
Okay.
I've been in healthcare for 20. So I started fresh out of high school into healthcare as a PSW, and then I did some time in social services as an autism liaison and IBI therapist. Then came back to healthcare and then went back to school for nursing, and then SWAN, and now I'm in school again getting my degree.
What is it you like about nursing?
Oh my gosh, I love being involved in people's care. I love that you're learning something constantly. Every single person that you see when you're pulling together, not just the diagnosis that they've received, but their family, their environment, all of these things. And you can paint this beautiful little puzzle of a picture and then you have to solve it.
Okay. And I just learned from you there's different kinds of nursing. There's community nursing and what was the other nursing?
So there's facility nursing,
Okay.
and there's also public sector. There's quite a few different areas actually nurses.
And what kind of nursing were you in?
Community.
Okay. And I understand your journey has brought you through highs and lows and fairly big lows. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when I first started working in community, it was a PSW. And then when I went on to nursing, one of the things I love about it is because I'm a single mother, it allows me the flexibility to full-time parent my children, as well as full-time support them by working, and really being able to go into people's homes and becoming members of their families and things like that. So pretty much right away I started working on specialties. So I have a lot of focus, palliative peds, nephrology, wound ostomy, continence, things like that. Yeah. So it started with that, and then the challenge with community nursing is we're alone all the time. So people don't really understand what a community nurse does. They think a lot of the times when you tell somebody, hey, I'm a community nurse, they think you're changing, Band-Aids and giving baths all day, but that's not the case at all. And the environment that we're working in is a big challenge as well because we're alone. So our practice is entirely autonomous. We do have supervisors between specified hours if they're available to answer their phone. But otherwise, you're on your own going into people's homes. That's where our patients are. Also, sometimes retirement homes, hotels, if we're serving transient populations, safe houses, boarding houses, things like that. And you're completely alone. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know what the patient's going to be like. You don't know what the family's going to be like, if they have any at all. You don't know if there's going to be other people on site. Even the neighbors can attribute to risk in this environment, so it's hard.
And have you had encounters now as a nurse in these private environments trying to do your job?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had a lot of great positive experiences, but the challenge is, again, because we're behind closed doors and a lot of the population that we're dealing with, I have suffered quite a few instances of sexual assault. I've been exposed to a lot of sexual violence and physical violence. And on top of that, there's a psychological trauma as well of, the patient population that we serve, because I also do palliative. So, you're supporting patients through their death process as well as their families in their home. So, a lot of that impacts your trauma response as well.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Mm-hmm. So, are you still nursing now?
Unfortunately, I am still on a leave. So in June, was my last attack that I had serving transient population, unfortunately, in a safe treatment site. So I was attacked again by a few people who were not patients of mine. They were actually just on site. And as a result of that, as well as the organization that I was working for reprimanding me for requesting escort and safe work for the next nurse to go in, I suffered a nervous breakdown. The next day it was pretty bad. I was stuck in my car. I couldn't get out. And it took me about 10 days after that to start to come together. I couldn't even touch my front door, let alone get out of my home. So I'm still struggling with that.
Oh, how long has that been now?
So that was June. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 10 months.
Wow.
10 months. Yeah.
That's a long journey.
Yeah, it's a challenge because you don't know what's going to trigger you. And because it's so many different episodes that kind of compounded and shape shifted, and then, the last one that happened was what I guess broke in my brain. It's like a smell will set you off, and a sound, a song, a word. And I'm through therapy, and WSIB has been supporting me phenomenally. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but they've been really supportive in providing therapy for my workplace PTSD. And so just as you start to learn your coping strategies and feel like you're going to be okay, that one thing happens. And for me, a lot of it has been, continued harassment, unfortunately, by my previous employer. Every time I start to move on, they creep back in, and it triggers everything again. And then I'm stuck. 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, I found myself in crisis. I couldn't even leave my bedroom. It was so bad. And I had to call the crisis line for help because I couldn't get out to take myself anywhere to get help. And so I'm trying to come back from that and parent my kids alone while I'm dealing with that. And it's hard.
You have how many kids?
I have 3.
Okay.
Yep, I have 3 special needs kids.
You have your hands full.
Yep.
You would think of all things a healthcare provider would be more facilitative of your journey and what you've been going through. Mm-hmm. But it seems to be the other way.
Yeah, and that was one of the contributing factors to what led to my trauma, unfortunately, was I did reach out for support, and you expect the organization and the people who are supposed to be supporting you in your autonomous high-risk job to contribute to you feeling safe and secure and have somebody to rely on. And in addition to them not supporting me to feel safe and secure and reprimanding me for wanting to feel safe and secure, then they weren't contacting me at all while I was reaching out. So it puts you in this position where, you're in an organization that you previously loved, in an industry that you love, and you're feeling alone and you feel like you have nobody. And, you're begging and you're begging and you're begging, and nobody's there. And you're trying to pick yourself back up so you can put yourself back there, for the sake of your patients and a job that you love. And
so if you had a word to share with your community or the world at large, so other people are going through the same kind of things you've been through or going through what you're going through now, what would that be?
Oof. PTSD is a struggle, and you really have to make sure that you don't take your good days for granted, but you also have to feel your bad days. One of the hardest parts in my journey in the beginning was trying to force myself to not feel the bad days I was having, to try to hide the panic so I could get back out there, because I felt like I was weak if I wasn't going to work. I was weak if I wasn't standing up for my children. I was weak if I needed to crumble on the floor and cry because my brain was tricking me into fearing for my life. And that's not the fact, because the only way that you can work through it and get better is embracing those feelings that you're having and reaching out to people for support, which is another thing people like me are good at. So,
do you see an end to this? What is your goal? What is your end to this?
I want to be okay. That's my end goal. I want to be okay. I want to have a day where I don't wake up in a panic attack. I want to have a day where I can find an organization that's going to appreciate and value me enough to do the job that I love, but also feel safe doing it, because nurses, there's this expectation that there's things we experience in our field, and we don't have to. We should be able to be safe and supported doing something that we love and come home okay to our children. So that's what I want.
Are there things we can do to help you?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I think, just the awareness of, especially in community nursing, having people understand that, there's a lot more out there than we know, and facilitating connections. That's one of the other things that I've learned through this, is there are connections and there are support, but nobody tells you. Nobody tells you. So if anything were to come out of my experience and what I have, it would be, you really have to fight for yourself, and you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And the world needs to look at you not as a weak person, but as somebody who needs help. Don't stand back and say, you're gonna get through this on your own. Help me get through this. Help us get through this, because we don't know why our brain is doing what it's doing.
I remember you telling me at one time that a lot of people tell you that you're strong or you're resilient. Mm-hmm. and that is a blessing and a difficulty for you at the same time. Can you describe why and how that is?
Yeah, so I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, a lot of unfortunate situations, and for the most part, I am on my own. I support myself. I support my children, and I also save the world. So when my phone rings, it's usually to help somebody else. It's to save somebody else. But the phone, isn't answered in the opposite respect. So because I've had these challenges presented to me, it's been a lot of survival. So every time something falls apart, because I know my children need me, I have no choice but to figure out what is this problem, what is the solution, how am I going to get there, and I work through it and I get there, and you start to feel great, and then you're knocked down again by the next thing and the next thing, divorce, abuse, this situation with my work. There's been quite a few things, and I keep bringing myself back up. But it's not, people think it's because I want to, because I'm driven, because I'm excited to, what's the next goal, what's the next plan, what's the next challenge. I have no choice. It's survival. And I thank God every day for the strength to be resilient and to be able to, bring myself to a point to build myself back up. But it's exhausting. And when other people look at you from the outside and they just see every time you get back up, less people want to help you because they think you can manage on your own. They think you want to manage on your own, but you don't. But you also don't want to be a burden to other people. And so here you are, this strong, resilient, taking care of everything and always coming out on top, regardless of how far down you fall. Every single time you get up, it's harder and it's harder and it's harder, and your circle gets smaller. And so, for other people to be looking at people struggling and commenting on how strong they are, I promise you, not one of them is saying thank you. Not one of us are. We're tired. We're tired.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, I'm gonna cry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We have more to share. This is just part of it. So let's go on to another segment after a break, because these segments need to be short for the short attention spans of everyone else. So I'd like to get into some of the things that you've dealt with now in the last 3 years regarding the jab and trauma and drama that you wouldn't believe, especially being the industry that she's in. So let's reconvene in a few moments. Welcome back to Spaulding Feature. Here we have Christene Bell, and we went into some of her history as a nurse and the trauma associated with it, PTSD, and as a result of doing her job and getting hurt in the process. And in that process also, she didn't feel understood or respected, or I don't put words in your mouth, but respected by her employer. I'd love to just pick up where we left off and then go into the next level that's just unbelievable. Go ahead. So you would have thought your employer would have understood and had given you what was required to heal, but that didn't seem to be the case?
No. So after, the initial episode, I like to refer to it as an episode. It makes me feel a little bit better than breakdown. Right away, the first email that I received from management, again, with the reprimanding, accusing me of things. For example, I knew a nurse had to go in after me to the same location where I was attacked. And so I had requested an escort for them to management to make sure that this other nurse was safe as well. So in this email that I received from management the following day, because unfortunately nobody else wanted to go there, surprise, and so management had to go escort this nurse, was specifically that I used my authority and leadership inappropriately by requesting an escort for this next nurse. So to make sure that my coworker was safe diving into transient populations.
Escort is in a security guard?
No. So when we request an escort, because the organization and the law, but the organization has a policy indicating that if you perceive to be unsafe, you can request a buddy system. So that's another staff member to come along with you. In instances of these buddy systems, the escort or the buddy, their cute word is buddy, is they are to wait for you outside. You are to be together, go into the environment together, exit together. So it's a full escort.
Another nurse.
Another nurse or another staff. It can be any staff member, but it's to be 2 staff members.
So it's not as a qualified security member, somebody
that it should be.
Conflict resolution or anything of that sort.
That's right. Yeah, and this was one of my other arguments. So, when they, that's one of the things that set me off was because I was already feeling so unsafe. And I was feeling, not just from the attack, which also brought out all of the previous attacks and sexual assaults that I had had, but knowing that these people who are supposed to stand there and support me and provide me with safe access while I'm alone so I can care for these patients, they were nowhere. They were nowhere for me. And not only were they nowhere for me, but they told me, reinforced that they will not be there for me. And one of the other things that, they really pushed in the beginning before they disappeared, while I was not able to exit my house, was, they said that specific management had a lot of mental health and crisis training. But we aren't provided with mental health and crisis training. And, under our College of Nurses, if you're not competent to provide care, you don't. And in order to be competent, you have to receive that training. So why are we going into situations where we might need to respond with crisis response management and deal with unstable, untreated mental health situations where we haven't been provided that education? And so I fought back with regards to that too. I actually created and submitted an entire proposal. I tried to be as positive as I possibly could in the beginning, despite the fact that they weren't there for me and they continued to make me feel unsafe. I designed a proposal and a policy to show them how we could do better, how we could be better, how we could be safe and provide the best care for our patients, and bring in additional organizations that are there to support us. Because when we're dealing with humans, you're not a box that I'm putting together. You're somebody who has an illness and you deserve the best care from all sides. So why not do that together? And let's do it safely. And unfortunately, they didn't want to talk about that either. So, I was left alone, falling apart, fearing for my life, and begging to go back to a job to feed my kids that I knew wasn't going to keep me safe. How do you live like that? How do you live like that and not continue to fall apart? I
understand nursing's the only thing you've done.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's an important career for you, something you want to stay in. I understand this has turned into litigated action.
Yes.
So you can't say the name of the employer.
That's correct.
I understand because of this you're not able to maintain work in the same kind of field.
So there's a couple of reasons. I mean, right now, also trying to work towards repairing the symptoms of the PTSD and getting myself back on track. But because I cannot work in community care, there's a lot of triggers there as well with my PTSD. The only other option is facility. And one of the problems with facility is vaccinations.
Facility being hospitals.
Hospital, long-term care.
Long-term care, okay. Vaccinations, okay.
Yeah, the next big one.
Let's go there. What's been your experience thus far with the vaccination process in this province?
Yeah, so not to start a COVAX, NOVAX divide or anything like that, because my situation's quite a bit different, and I hate being pegged in the same spot as that. But I have a lot of medical conditions. I've been through a lot, and one of those medical conditions, which I'm still waiting for an internist to pinpoint and pull apart at the microbiology level to figure out what's wrong with me, is I have allergic reactions to nothing. Spontaneously. So I have some triggers, environmental triggers, some food triggers, things like that, but as well as medications, and that includes vaccinations. So, it started more systemic reactions. Every now and then I would get something out of nowhere, up to and including anaphylaxis, which sucks. If you don't know what that is, it's life-threatening. It's going to kill you. Eventually your throat closes down. You stop breathing. So anyway, so as a nurse, again, loving my job, I knew getting into nursing that you have to have vaccinations. Your vaccinations have to be up to date. You know, you have to check for your immunities. I'm no stranger to that. So when the pandemic first hit and we're out there with no PPE, because community doesn't get that either. It all gets pumped out to LTC and facilities, right? And we're reusing PPE and we're trying our very best to be, you know, as aseptic as we possibly can, going house to house to house to house, you know, putting on and taking off. We were good enough then, and then the vaccination hit, and they said, okay, like science says, you have to get this vaccine, this COVID vaccine to keep working. So my first thought is, you know what, I've had to get a ton of vaccines for nursing as it is. Line up, get her done, you know. So I got my first vaccination, and I responded with an anaphylactic reaction immediately. So I was treated with, you know, Epi and Benadryl for that. Recovered nicely. Clearly, I'm still here. And then I went about my merry way because I need to get back to work. I did what I had to do. You know, again, I keep falling back on this. I have kids to feed, but I do, and that's what it comes down to. And then a couple of months after that, I was due for my tetanus booster. So I went to my family doctor for my tetanus booster, and I had a severe allergic reaction to that as well. He was afraid to give me full dose IM Benadryl when I was having my allergic reaction. So I was approaching anaphylactic with a throat closing, but I could still breathe because I had reacted. So he was afraid to give me another needle that was going to cause me to react. But what do you do? Because otherwise I'm going to progress, right? So at that point, my doctor had said, no more vaccinations. We need to get you sent off to immunology, put in a requisition to immunologist. And again, I went back out into our pandemic world and continued working as a nurse. And then our second vaccination became mandatory. So now I'm stuck in a position where I've been told no more vaccinations, not even the flu shot, until I'm assessed by immunology, because these things are trying to kill me. In the meantime, my side effects were getting a lot worse. So my spontaneous allergic reactions were more frequent. They were more severe. Even as a stress response, I was becoming full-blown head to toe with hives, allergic reactions. And but the mandate is what the mandate is. So I begged my employer. I provided them with a GP exemption, saying I am waiting for immunology. You know, here's the reactions that I've suffered previously. I'm not just not doing it to not do it. And we had a cutoff date. So October 15th to get your second vax or lose your job by the 31st. So I went back to my GP and I begged, because I still had not heard from immunology. And he pushed harder to try to get me in with immunology faster. So immunology gave me an intake date of December, but my job last date was October 15th, and my employer wouldn't wait. So now they're saying we can't guarantee you a job, we can't guarantee you hours, and I have a decision to make because I'm a single mom with 3 kids that I need to support on my own. I have bills to pay, I have mouths to feed, and I rely on not just my income but my overtime to do that. And so you're stuck in this position of, you know, trying to have meetings, trying to get them to wait. And again, they're not supporting the fact that you have a medical condition and your doctor has agreed that you shouldn't be doing these things. They're just putting their foot down because their policy states an immunologist must exempt you or you lose your job. So on October 13th, I had my will done. I made sure my life insurance was in order. Sorry, it gets me upset every time. And I made a video because now I'm stuck in a position of risking my life so that I can work to feed my kids, or losing my job and not being able to feed my kids. And I wanted to make sure I was prepared for that. So, you know, you start calling around to people to see who's going to take them, who's going to look after them for you, just in case you do die. Hoping that you don't die so you can keep working, because like that's the end goal, right? And sorry. So I got everything in order, and I let, you know, people know where my will was and all of these things. I put a video out letting people know this is what I was doing, and I went and got my second shot. And so with my second shot, I had anaphylactic reaction immediately. First dose of Epi, nothing. Second dose of Epi, started to relieve some of the symptoms, but still nothing. So ambulance came and hooked me up to Benadryl, took me to the hospital. And so you're explaining to the ambulance, you know, the paramedics, why you've done this stupid thing, you know. And when you get there, after repeated, so now I've had 2 anaphylactic reactions, they shove you in a corner by yourself so you can just have more anaphylactic reactions and die while you're waiting to be seen. So I went home, and over the next 2 days, I had 3 more. So I had 5 anaphylactic reactions over 3 days. I lost my vision for a day going down my stairs. And so the side effects of that continue to be that sometimes my vision will come in and out. It has likely a side effect of how much epinephrine I had to have. And my allergic responses to things have gotten even worse. So I had to have a TB test to try to get another job. And my entire body was in hives. It was incredible, but no TB, so that's good. And anyway, so that brings me to now. So because I have PTSD and I can't go back to community where you only require 2 vaccinations, facilities require 3. So now I spent a few days going clinic to pharmacy, begging somebody to vaccinate me, to risk my life, to get another vaccination so I can get a job. Because WSIB can't pay you forever. You know, the expectation is that you build skills to go back to work, and you can't really see how your PTSD is going to respond to an environment until you're there. So the idea is to get your coping strategies up enough to work. But in order to work, I have to, once again, risk my life with a vaccine so I can do that. So nobody will vaccinate me. Every place that I go, I fail. It's called a screener, so I fail it because of my reactions, my previous reactions, as well as my other allergic reactions. So nobody will do it. So they said I should get a controlled setting. All of this time, immunology has still not picked me up. So I'm waiting because my first immunologist said I was far too complicated. So he referred me to an internist immunologist at a bigger hospital. And they haven't picked up my referral yet because I'm in line with the no-vaxxers also. Like all of us are in the same line. So I'm, you know, potentially dying to work in line with people who, for whatever reason, and I don't care because everybody has a choice, you know, not getting their vaccinations. And it would be nice if I could just get that frickin' exemption because I don't want to die. I don't want to die to be a nurse. I'm a nurse. I love my job. We were good enough when we had no PPE to be thrown into these places and look after these people when nobody even knew how bad COVID was. And then as COVID was killing people, we were still good enough to go in there, not vaccinated, not even educated. They were pulling people from behind desks and throwing them into this world of COVID virus house to house to do all of these things. And it was fine. But now, I mean, our numbers COVID funding is dropping. Like they don't even have studies on passing on this boosters to next boosters and how much it's going to support you. People are getting 5 and 6 shots and still getting COVID. I just want to not die and keep working. And me, with all of my allergic reactions, being in community care, subjected to all of these things, I never got COVID once. So why can't I put on my gloves and my mask and my gown that were good enough before and go do the job that I love? Why do I have to go and potentially die so I can feed my kids? What's the difference? So that's where I am. For a job that I might not be able to get anyway, because they want management reference and I can't do that either since I'm suing them. So.
Is there anything we can do to help you?
I think people need to be better informed when they're advocating for, you know, things like advancement of science. And that's one of the things that irritates me through all of this. And I 100% support people who do not want to be vaccinated. That's your body, that's your choice. I've been pushed into a position where I don't really have a choice because this is the only job and profession that I know. But don't just not do it or do it because somebody told you to not do it or do it. You're out there raising your flags and shouting and honking your horns and crying, poor me. And if somebody actually asked you, what is the reason you want to get vaccinated, or what is the reason you don't, you have no evidence to back that up because you're caught up in the hype. And then there's people like me who are risking our lives and almost dying because we don't have a choice. That kills me. Be informed. Inform yourself. Make a decision because you're informed about that decision, not because everybody else is doing it. That's the way to help. That's the way to help the world, and leave people to their choices. You know, I'm one of the things, and I'll tell you, that's been really hard for me during all of this is one of my very close friends who's also a nurse who made the decision to not vaccinate, which is fine. And so when I was explaining my situation about having to put my life at risk to get this vaccination, they fired about, you know, it's poison and it's toxic and it's just, you know, don't do this to yourself and all of these things. But what they're not appreciating, they're not taking a step back, and we had this conversation, is you're not seeing the bigger picture of my life here. I am well aware of what the previous vaccinations did to me, which is why I have a will. That's why I'm terrified. But my life circumstances says, if I don't risk my life, I don't feed my kids and I lose my home. It's not about COVID anymore. It's about being able to work. And like this, the law and the government, I mean, very slowly at this snail's pace, they're changing their regulations and their mandates depending on where you walk and what door you open. Like, sit at a table and make up your mind and let us do our freaking jobs. I want to save people. I want to not die to save people.
Have you found other people with your same kind of experience?
So in my circle, I have not. In my entire organization where I was working, the only divide that we had was personal choice divide with the COVAX and the Novax. I am the only person in my circle who has suffered the reaction that I have. However, I did participate in a lot of, I forget what they're called, when we were trying to fight, you know, the vaccination policies for people who wanted to continue to work. I can't remember the word for it when they get together. Anyway, in that setting, there was a lot of strangers from other areas who were in a similar position that I was, as well as people who, you know, they hadn't had their vaccination at all, but they did have a lot of other health conditions that made things terrifying for them. And so the thought of having all of these other health conditions, and the government is saying that's why you should, but they know the treatments for their current health conditions are making them sicker and sicker and sicker, and they're afraid to add one more. And then, you know, the outside world still looks at them like they're a terrible person because they don't want to take the shot. And it's like, they're just as much afraid of losing their life as I am. Why are you going to add more when we're still waiting for more information?
How are they contending with it?
Yeah, so in these groups, I mean, after getting to the point where we were formulating how to approach our employers to not get the vaccinations and what routes we wanted to take and things like that, I have absolutely no idea what they've done with themselves. I hope to God that they were able to get in with immunology as well. Because unfortunately, in our stretched healthcare system where everybody's waiting 2 years to see a specialist, now we're waiting 4, just because we want to save our lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you have suggestions, comments, we want to hear from you. You can reach us at the comment section below, I can say that. Or you can reach us through our Spaulding Canada website, spauldingcanada.ca. So I know this is time dated sometime in March of 2023. And so things are changing quickly in your life. I know you're working on the 3rd jab. We'll find out what happens there. Hopefully you'll live.
Yeah.
We'll find some solution for you. And I'm all ears because I'm just the host. I don't have the answers. So we do want to hear from you if you have some thoughts. We'll get this video out there as soon as we can. Are there any closing thoughts, wisdoms, statements, things you'd like to share with the audience?
I think really you just need to hang in there. At the end of the day, that's all that you can do. There's so many things that are outside of our control. And one of the biggest things that I've learned through all of this, not just, you know, my PTSD and the COVAX situation, but also my personal life situation, being a single mother, there are so many things that are not in your control, and you can't let that completely destroy you. There is another way. You just have to find that way. And it can be cloudy, but
And you've done that before.
I've done it so many times. I've done it so many times, and this is just another challenge and another opportunity, although I hate that word right now because I'm still in the resentment period of my resilience. But it is a challenge, and it's an opportunity to find the next best thing, and something will come. And the best part about the resiliency that I resent is when I come out on top, it's going to be because of me. So
Excellent.
that's it.
Okay. We're not done yet. There's more to come. Something more on the brighter, shinier side of things. How about we do that? So next episode, we're going to do something really cool. Thank you, Christene, for joining us. Christene Bell. And we'll see you next time on a Spaulding Feature.
We're back.
We're back. Welcome back again with Christene Bell. Okay, on the lighter side of things, your favorite time of the year, your favorite thing to do. Tell.
Christmas.
Okay.
It's my favorite time of year. So I'll start by saying it's based on the fact that I try my hardest to practice altruism, which is doing good to do good, specifically to do good. So through all of the struggles that I've been in, which we have talked about, there's so many positive things. And one of the positive things, too, is the fact that it just takes a little bit to make a difference in somebody else's life. And that little thing that you do can be a life changer for somebody in their darkness, because you don't know the darkness that people are dealing with. And so at Christmas time, in addition to a couple other things I do, outcast dinners. I bring people in who don't have families, and we have dinner so they can have a family, choose your own adventure, which I love. I do a thing called Nicky Nicky Nine Doors. So this started before I even have a memory of it. My grandfather, who passed away when I was quite young, he used to, in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve, knock on the door of his own home for my grandmother and drop her off a gift from Santa. And as I started to get older, my grandfather passed away, and my mother had carried that on for my grandmother, and she lived quite a distance. My mother didn't drive, so I had a lot of opportunity to participate in that. And I didn't really know the impact of what I was doing then until I started doing it for my own mother. And after I started doing it for my own mother and seeing how happy it made her, I do some little personal things in there and stuff like that. And the adrenaline rush that I would get from the middle of the night, even though at the end of the day she knew it was me, I decided to expand that. So over the years, what I've done is I have a couple of families that I go to consistently every year, but every year I also pick which they just happen to fall on me. I don't pick as in I, put people in a hat and pick a name out. They fall on me. So on social media, I'll see stories. People are talking about, Christmas and how hard it is. And being a nurse, you see a lot of people who are alone. And so you see stories posted about people who it's the worst time of year for them. We're all out there talking about our families and getting together and all of this happiness, and they just have nothing. So I started building Nicky Nicky 9-door bags for other people as well. So what I do is usually about October, November, I start collecting just random little knick-knacky things. I like to do a lot of personalized things from local businesses. So I don't know if you can shout out in the comments for people to put their ideas in there too. But
all right.
I love to support local. And so I do a lot of, knick-knacky personalized mugs. I'll put a little picture in there, stuff like that. And I build these bags. I also put some necessity items, feel-good items, some nice soaps and mitts and hats and that kind of stuff. And I build these bags. And so Christmas Eve, in the middle of the night, after, I've done my outcast dinners and built my house for my children and put all of my things up, I load up my car, and regardless of weather, because this past Christmas was tough, I drive to different locations and I knock on their door, and I leave this bag and I run. And people don't know where it comes from because I always put a little inspirational message in the cards. This past year, I wanted to remind people, because we've been through a hard time, you are worthy, you are important, and you are loved. and love Santa. And I leave it for them so that they have something. And, it's not really the items, it's the fact that they're being thought of. They need that reminder that they are being thought of even when they feel alone. And I think we need a lot more of that in this world.
All right. And this is just something that you do? Do you involve your family with it?
Nope, this is just me. So a couple of times, my now teenager, he's come with me on the ride. I try really hard to expose my children to what I'm doing because I also encourage them to do good. Altruism is very important. We were actually born altruistic, and then the world has just shifted us into these self-centered beings. So my kids know what I do. This past year, my teenager, he came with me to a couple, and he got a pretty big kick out of it because some of the places that I had to go, this one gentleman that I did a drop off, he lived in this basement apartment all alone, all by himself, not the greatest of health. And the driveway was just full of snow and ice. And I had to go park at the end and drag this big sack up the driveway and around and behind. And now, there's no spot for you to hide, right? So I have to put this thing and hide. And when I came back, my son said to me, this is the first time he's ever asked, why do you do this? Why are you giving these things to these people? Especially because I've, been off work and dealing with all of these things. And I said to him, we have what we need. We have what we need, and we need to let other people know that we're here. So I'm hoping that they'll carry it on. I just wish that they'll look back and go, oh, my mom was so crazy. She used to have all of these people over all the time, and, we didn't know half of them, and she used to drop all of these stuff. And I hope that something clicks and they decide that they're going to do it too.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're in Barrie, Ontario, Canada.
I am.
Would you take someone along with you if they wanted to come?
I absolutely would. Be prepared for a drive because I go, Keswick, Innisfil, all over the place. Wherever it's needed, I drive. So it's quite a few hours and a lot of hot chocolate.
How many people do you do in a year?
So it depends every year. It depends on the need. So I always have 4. This past year I did 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
From across the region.
From across the region, yeah.
And how do you find out about these people?
Social media is the biggest way. So, and that's also a challenge because I want to save the world, and you can't save everybody, and I am not by any means rich. So I do my best to be creative with the Nicky Nicky 9-door bags that I'm building. But what I do is I really look for, those people who, and it's a challenge because there's so many people who need help and they don't reach out. But when people are posting and they're asking for these bare minimum things, they're on there and they're not saying, one of them was actually somebody reached out to me and it was about her parents, and she's not reaching out and saying, hey, when you're Nicky Nicky 9-doors, can you get them a new blender? Can you get them a this? This one woman, she's phenomenal, and she reached out and she just said, times are tough and they've been through a lot, and their mental health is suffering, and it would be nice for them to have a pick-me-up, and I can't give that to them. So that one was really special to me because I was able to give them a gift, and I was also able to give her a gift because she was there to experience the whole thing, and it made her feel like she was doing a great thing for them as well when she couldn't. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I hope you start a trend.
I would love to start a trend, and if people wanted to come on board and help me carry sacks all over the world, we need a little bit more Santa. That's magic. That's magic.
Okay. So reach us through the comment section. Reach us through spauldingcanada.ca. I might create a special email or something so you can reach out so you can keep organized here.
Yes. Color
reach out.
coordinated.
I want to hear from you. Would you take donations from businesses and others if you
I would love donations because I'd be able to reach more. And this is one of the challenges that I experience with when I'm doing my Nicky Nicky 9-doors is having to make the choice of who's going to get their drop this year. Because again, I don't have all the money in the world. My children are fantastic at a very young age. We've done, we have to purge to get over the last couple of years. We actually don't really do a lot of presents. It's more about spending time and giving to others. And so it would be really nice to be able to reach more people and have a little bit less of having to pick and decide, who's worse off, even if we made smaller bags with more things and reached more people, I don't know, but yeah, it would be nice. It'd be nice to reach more.
Okay, well, as we get closer, I'll give you a gift certificate or 12 or something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be the first one. And you follow me. You can definitely reach out. We want to see you give something. Even if you're not a business, if you're a household that would like to bless another, even if you want to give something financially that she can reach out and shop for the right person, that would be absolutely stunning. Okay, so reach us at this channel. I don't know if you want to give your contact information, but I'll protect you from the world at large.
Yeah.
And you can reach us through spauldingcanada.ca. I'm not a control freak, but at the same time, I care about all of our guests. So I want to make sure they don't get...
I would love your support,
Okay.
because this can be a big thing.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so thank you for this positive story.
Yes, you're welcome.
Wonderful. And now we have one last very rich chapter and rich set of experiences to go through that I'm sure will grip you. So we'll catch up with you soon in Spaulding Feature. The legendary and formidable three letters, CAS. Yes, Children's Aid Society in Ontario, Canada. I won't say anything. I'll let the experiences speak for themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the Children's Aid Society in your life?
Yes, I can. We've talked a little bit about traumas and things that I've experienced, and I've mentioned a few times that I have kids, special needs children. So two of them are my children. My oldest, he's lived with me for a long time. He's my brother, but he has special needs as well. So when you have some of the experiences that I've had, abusive relationships, and children are involved, it's only natural that CAS also gets involved. Unfortunately, once upon a time, I was told that CAS was this fantastic service that will come in when there's a child endangerment issue. They provide you with supports, get to the bottom of it, try to help get rid of the problem. At least that's the best that I was informed. When CAS first became involved in my life, it was after some situations that my oldest had been in. So he does have autism, among other things, and he requires therapy and supports for that. He went through some trauma with his biological father. And as a result of, the anxiety and traumas that he was dealing with, I put him into therapy. So our government services, not that I want to get all focused on that, but mental health services are terrible, and the wait lists are excruciating. And if you don't have a diagnosis, it takes even longer. So I was in a position where, my son needed help now, and I can't wait. So I put him in therapy, because that's what you're supposed to do, private therapy. And every professional will tell you that if there is potential or uttered risk of danger, that they have to call CAS. And so for me, having, removed myself from that relationship, you think you're doing a great job as a parent, you're taking care of them by yourself, you're getting them the help that they need. You're thinking, okay, well, I've removed the danger, so there shouldn't be a need for a phone call. That's why he's in therapy to begin with, so he can talk about the things that are affecting him, so he can learn to cope and get better. So during this time, he went through 4 different therapists, where just as he got to a point where he was comfortable with them, to start talking about the traumas that he had experienced and the things that he went through, so he could get some real help. The therapist had identified that, what he was saying indicated a danger to his safety. So they call CAS, and then CAS calls me. So what I learned through that was, when CAS gets involved in your life and you are the sole provider, sole parent for your child, you're actually the one who gets interrogated, even if the issue isn't you. So what would happen is, and I always call it getting ripped up one side and down the other, as well as my son was ripped up one side and down the other. They question everything that you do. At one point, they even came in and asked me to pull down my son's pants to prove that I wasn't beating him, because of the anxiety attacks that he was having related to his autism, which was embarrassing for him. And I'm panicking as a mother, and so I'm getting ready to strip him in front of a stranger. Let's talk about re-traumatizing your child, right? But you do it. And what my son learned very quickly was help leads to harm, because every time he would get to a point where he was comfortable to talk about the things that were bothering him and what he wanted help with, he knew that somebody was going to come in and start questioning him and interrogating him and questioning his mother and checking out their home. And that scared him. And so he didn't want to talk. And the end result of that is then he doesn't have help. And I'm the one who's left to pick up the pieces. And I'm the one who's left trying to be his therapist and his support and help him when I'm reaching out to get help, because I don't have all of the tools to provide him with everything that he needs. And children don't always want to tell their parents, newsflash, everything that's going on in their heads and their lives. So they deserve a safe space to do that. But that safe space always resulted in feeling like he was in trouble for talking about the things that bothered him. And so that continued and progressed. My youngest son, his father is an alcoholic, he's an addict, and it was a very abusive relationship. There was abuse to not just myself, but my children as well. My now teenager at a very young age, unfortunately, had to save me from a lot of situations, which again is traumatizing. And it affects their mental health. And so when I was finally able to escape that relationship, you know, you get your kids back in therapy because you need to rebuild, and they need to be okay. And so you put your kids back in therapy because that's what you're supposed to do. And again, CAS comes. CAS is involved again. They call CAS because there's a danger. And I'm going, I've removed the danger. I've removed the danger. I did everything that I could. I survived in the moment that I was in. I did the best that I could for my children because they are my world. And I am trying to give them this help and support. And it got to the point after the ending of my relationship with my youngest father, where when I would call the therapist to set up an appointment for them to start services, I would say, and listen, this is how many times CAS has been involved in my life. This has been in our experience. My son needs help. I am begging you, call me before you call them. Call me before you call them, because he needs help and somebody needs to help him. So he went through 2 more therapists, unfortunately, who made the call regardless. And, you know, when you're talking about additional traumas, I'm, again, being traumatized and feeling like I'm a terrible mother because I was in a position that I was in, you know, with the relationship that I had, and I subjected my children to that. It wasn't my choice and it wasn't my fault. And here I am trying to rebuild and make them better and bring everybody in, because, you know, people say it takes a village to support a child, but every member of the village that I've had so far doesn't want to be there. They don't want to help. They want you to do it on your own, but when you're doing it on your own, they're telling you you're doing a bad job and you're sitting here fighting. So most recently, CAS has been involved again in my life, and this time it was my call. So, and that was hard. It was a hard decision to make, knowing that every time CAS has been involved, every time I've called them, every time someone else has called them, I know I'm going to be scrutinized as a parent. But I had to make the call because my youngest continued to suffer abuse from his biological father. So his biological father went to prison. When he got out of prison, he very quickly resumed his extracurricular activities, and, you know, doesn't like to show up for his visits. When he does show up for his visits, he's drunk. And I don't know if you're aware, but that's abuse too. And, you know, it got to the point where, because my youngest son has autism and Tourette's and ADHD, so he's a very special boy. He's also very gifted. He is magical and is going to do great things in this world, but he struggles. He really struggles in this world. He's in a lot of programs and supports that I've worked really hard to put him in, because he's at an age where he understands his disabilities. I involve him in every decision that I make. So when there's a service and support that can help him learn to survive in the world that we have, because the world is not built for special needs kids at all, he gets to participate in that. And so he chooses every part of his life. I homeschool him. Even when I was working full-time, I was homeschooling him full-time. So his father decided to continue the abuse and attack his special needs by telling him directly that he's not normal, that he shouldn't be participating in any of these supports, which are the only reason he functions well, and attacking everything that he knows. And so my son, despite his special needs, understood that his dad's message was he was not normal, because his dad said to him, you need to be normal. This is not normal. The things that you're doing are not normal. And so he fell apart and he cried, and I had to try to figure out how to help him and support him while he was falling apart, while also keeping in the back of my mind that I've done my very best to not damage the relationships that my children have with their fathers. They can make their own decision. I will never speak a bad word, but I won't make excuses for them either. So to try to stay in this unbiased position and support him. And my youngest son, as part of his autism, you know, this was the heaviest and hardest hitting home part for me and why I called. He does not tolerate physical touch at all. I can't even remember the last time I was able to hold him in my arms, let alone hold his hand, because he just doesn't tolerate it. And in this moment when he was falling apart, because he felt like he was worthless, he asked me to hug him, and he pushed himself past this not being able to tolerate this physical touch because he needed to be put back together, and I held him. And I could not believe that I was able to have that. And it was like, this is wrong. This is wrong. So you take a step back and you look and you go, what do you do? How do you make this stop? Because I've done everything right. I went through court. I followed our court papers. I try to supervise his access. I try to give them a relationship because he deserves to have a relationship with his father, regardless of what human he is. But I also need to protect my son. But history says when I protect my children, I'm the one who's told that I'm a bad person. But when I don't protect my children, I'm a bad person. So like, how do you not be the bad person? So I made the call. I called CAS and I reported his abuse. And then they started asking questions like they always do. How much support do you have in your life? And all of these things. And it's always a big joke because they tell you need more support, but they have no answers to getting you more support. And so then they said, this is not right. And this is abuse. And we're going to talk to him. They say, we're going to figure this out and we're going to help you. Because I said, my next thing is cutting off all access. I need to protect my son. But my court papers specify I am required to allow them their visitation. So I need somebody to help me because the only other option is to fight with a lawyer, and I do not have the money for that. So what do you do? So anyway, CAS said, okay, we're going to investigate. We're going to get on this. A week and a half later, they finally decide they're going to call him. So a week and a half after being informed that a child is being abused by their parent, they called him. And then they called me after they spoke to him on the phone. And, the positive side of this, I'm going to start right there, is they didn't rip me apart this time, which was nice. But what they decided was because his father apologized for his abuse, that they were optimistic about how things were going to go. And they closed his case. They didn't even visit. They didn't even come to watch them interact. They didn't come talk to my son. They didn't ask did he make his last visit, which he did not. They didn't ask anything. They said, he apologized for abusing your son. So we are optimistic. So we're gonna close your case. And then it gets even better after that, because here I am, going, I've done everything right again, and there's no protection, and I need to protect my son. But if I remove all access against our court papers, I can be held in contempt. I will be looked at like the horrible person for preventing their relationship, even though it's to save him. So during this time, we talked about before, I was going through some trauma, and a couple of days after they were very optimistic about his apology, they said he was going to call me that day to apologize to me for abusing my son, which he didn't do. And on the Friday, I was in a really bad place with my PTSD. And the CAS worker, she had decided that she was going to call me back because she just wanted to follow up and make sure I understood that they were closing the case and all of these kinds of things. And she could hear that I was not okay. So she asks that question, which sets everybody off. Are you okay? And I'm just a mess. And I'm telling her, this is what's happening with me right now. And I have no one. I have no one. I have to be here for my kids. I have to pull myself together. And with her knowing what she knew about my ex-husband and the abuse and the history of abuse and the addictions and the fact that he still can't get it together long enough to have a 45-minute visit with her son. And when I said to her, I have no one, she said to me, yeah, but you have him. And in that moment, every ounce of me that knows that I need to hold it together for these people because they're also scrutinizing me with every word that comes out of my mouth, I lost my mind. How can you tell me that the person who is abusing my son and has abused my son over and over and abused me and continues to choose alcohol and addictions over his child is the one that I'm supposed to be calling for support right now. What service are you providing? That shouldn't be your answer. Go back to your abuser. Bring your child abuser into your home with your children. This is the support that we get. And so, it makes you sit and reflect and go, you got to do what you have to do at the end of the day. And one of the things that I've always taught my children is we have a 3-strike rule when you're dealing with bullies in the world, which is first you use your words, then you tell the teacher, and then you fight back. Because history says there's not always somebody there to save you. In fact, there's pretty much never anyone there to save you. But society requires us to follow these perfect little rules of how to handle our situations because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and we need to follow the rules of school boards and all of this stuff. So I've always done that with my kids, and I said, if you follow these rules, you use your words, you tell the teacher, and then you fight back, I will stand behind you every time. You do what you have to do to protect yourself and save yourself, because that's what our world has taught us. And so now I'm sitting in this situation where the agency who is supposed to help me protect my son wants me to run to him to support my children, even though they know that he's an abuser. And I'm not going to do that. So now I need to fight back because I've used my words and I've told my teacher, which is all of these government agencies who pretend to care at all. And nobody's there. So you have to fight back. So now I'm in a position where I have to do what I have to do to make sure my son is safe, even though the law isn't going to like it. And you have to live with that.
We can't say that on camera, can we? Yet there's no one breaking anyone's legs or anything
No,
soon.
but what I mean is, when you have this court document that's saying you are obligated to bring this alcoholic abuser into your home, and so he can have a relationship with your son, and he can't even manage that, and he's continued this abuse and this support system in our system that is supposed to stand behind you and say, okay, this is what you do next. This is how we're going to help you make sure your kid is safe. But instead, they're not helping you make sure your kid is safe. So now I have to make a decision about what is more harmful and what is more helpful. Am I going to violate this court order and prevent this relationship with my son and his father to make sure that he's safe, even though I know that the outside world decides that I'm a bad person because I'm cutting off their relationship? How dare you? How dare you not let the father be involved with his son? Because that's what the outside world sees. And even this CAS organization, because he apologized. And it was funny because when we finally heard from him a week later, because he again no-showed for his next visit, no contact, which also is abuse, just so you know, when your kid is sitting there waiting for his father to show up, and his father doesn't show up, and he's traumatized by the fact that once upon a time when his father didn't show up, it was because he was drunk and ended up in the hospital with spine injury and hurt all of these other people. So that's where he goes every time. And so he's sitting there waiting and waiting for him to show up, and he doesn't show up. And then a few days later, we finally get a drunken phone call from him, and he says to me that he was so anxious after talking to CAS that he decided to go meditate in a forest for 6 days. So that's why he didn't see his son, because he was so anxious about being called out on his abuse that he went to a forest to meditate and then came back and got drunk before calling his son. And I'm sitting here picking up the pieces. I'm the one who has to make everything okay and hold him when he cries and try to convince this beautiful being that he is normal. He is so normal. He has gifts. And there's so many people who are different in this world, and this world is just not built for the people that we have. And so we need programs and services and supports to learn to cope. Everybody does. You are normal and you are beautiful. And I'm having to do all of this repair and all of this repair. And he's just going to go hide from it in a forest. and come back and think it's okay because CAS told him it's okay because you apologized, you know?
So in all your experiences, words of wisdom or knowledge you can share.
Yeah, so it's a tough one, and some people are going to like it and some people aren't. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to your kids, but also when it comes to your own survival, you need to remember that really you're the only person who can save yourself. And you need to be careful about who you're reaching out to for help and support, because there is help and support out there. But you really have to look for the good ones. You need to take your time and you need to do what you have to do to protect your children. And you do it right and you reach out and you get all of the support that you can, but you need to not be afraid to stand up for what you know is right for your kids because they can't do it for themselves. And if we can teach them anything, it's that you can be resilient and strong, the words that I love and hate all the time. You can get through the things that are tough in your life, and here's an appropriate way to do it. You're not walking out into the world and throwing punches. You're going to think critically about what's going on in your life. You're going to reach out to people. You're going to build your network and be careful about who is in your circle. And at the end of the day, you're going to stand up. If you believe in what you believe in and you need what you need, you stand up and you fight for that and you take it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christene Bell, everybody. She's such a talent, such a wise and kind soul. And it's an honor to be sharing in the journey with her. If you want to reach out, you can reach us, spauldingcanada.ca. You can comment in the comments wherever they happen to be. And we want to see you here. If you know someone in our community that needs a Spaulding feature as well, needs to get the word out, has a great story to tell, we want to hear from you. And in the meantime, pleasure having you here.
It's been amazing. It's been a very enlightening experience, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you for being so transparent.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll catch you at the next show. Looking forward to it. I'm Damien Spaulding. We'll see you soon.
How you guys doing? My name is Aaron and I'm here with Christene. She's just finished doing a wonderful little group of skits with Damien at Spaulding Canada, and I'm just coming in for a follow-up little chat with her just to clear the air on any other topics and help just get everything off of the chest, because sometimes we all need a little extra support, a little shoulder to cry on, the ear to hear the burdens that we're going through. I know I could have used a few times, so I'm here for Christene right now. I'm going to let her have a few words now and get her air cleared out.
All right. I mean, I'm not even sure where to start because, you know, things have been intense in my life. What am I supposed to say?
I don't know. I know that you've gone through a bit. I can relate to some of your CAS. I'm not sure where I really want to take you because I'll take a moment here to say, you know, I've had a few years with CAS and I know the only way I could get them off of mine was to state to them exactly what I saw and felt for myself, because they don't really seem to be there for support. I will say that for sure. When I had to deal with them, they seemed like they wanted to take my kids away from me and break up my family more than help us solve the issues we were having so that we could become a stronger unit together. So I mean, with that, I had to kind of tell them straight out, like, this is exactly how you're making me feel, and give them the words and their actions that gave me that sensation. And then from there, I wouldn't hear from them again.
That's a horrible place to be in as a parent because, you know, like I'd mentioned earlier, when you're sitting there and you're trying to make the best decision that you can and you're using the only resources that you know, and, you know, you have these people involved with you who you've been told are there for you.
Right.
I'm here for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. And then you find out that they're not. And I mean, one of my struggles with them was those words that they were using, which was, what supports do you have? I want to help you. And so you're sitting here reaching out for help, thinking that you're going to get support. And then they just turn around and you don't get it. And you're lost and you're left in this world again. And this reminder that we're not together as a community. Like, how do we change that?
I always wondered though too, though, because I mean, I will say, they didn't so much say that they were there to support me, but the way that he used the words, you have to be one to listen to really what they're saying as well as how they're saying it, because they're really manipulative in the wordplay, kind of like your teachers would try to teach you in the old days in your English class in school, to really you learn to utilize and play and understand the words when you're using them or when people are using them towards you, so that you might understand where they're coming from, not just what's being said, but the intent behind it. And that's where it kind of came to me, because nowadays I don't think people really listen to the words to understand intent. And that's something that needs to be brought back into the school system, because then you can go back and you can understand where some people tell you they're there to support you, but when they say it and the way they say it, you know that they're just there because of a paycheck.
You know, and that's huge. That's huge everywhere, because I see that in a lot of other supports and services and things, with the types of children that I have. I've had a lot of agency involvement, meetings with schools, and it's the same thing with some of these agencies are fantastic. Some places you go to and they really do try their best to help you and get involved. The downside to those places is they cost you a lot of money. And so unless you have a lot of money coming in, you're not getting these fantastic, beautiful services. And so when you rely on government services, I find there's a huge difference there. And CAS is a government service. School boards, you have all these planning meetings and they tell you all of the ways that they're going to be there and all of the ways that they're going to help. And then when it starts, you're left with nothing and you're doing it yourself. And then you're homeschooling your kid while you're working full time. So yeah, it's a huge challenge. I just wish that our world as a whole, I mean, we need changes in our organization and we need changes in our mental health support systems, and we need changes with these people in the way that they speak to us and the way that they approach us with compassion. I mean, don't pretend to be compassionate if you're not actually going to be here, right? Tell me how it is and get out of my life, or actually be here for me.
Be there like you say. And
and I think
when I need it,
exactly. And I think the community as a whole needs to do a better job at that as well, right? Because, it leads back to one of those things I think we were talking about earlier with this resentment and appreciation of resiliency and strength, right? And you have the world around you watching you do your best to pick yourself up and watching you navigate these terrible services who pretend to be there for you. And, it's just, if you guys could stop standing and just come, just be here, just be with me. Like, let's be together as a community and support each other and understand that there's so many areas that are lacking that we could make up together.
So instead of, so really what we're looking for is a community where instead of saying, I'm there to help you, I'm there to support you, I'm there when you need me, is to keep the mouth quiet. I don't want to make it sound rude, but to keep the mouth quiet and actually get up and come give that hand, pick them up when they're down, see they're falling and help pick them up. Don't say, I'll be there when you need me, and then disappear, but show up when they're down and help get them back up, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need.
And one of the things that I relate it to is the drowning, right? So you're sitting there and you're drowning and you're drowning and you're reaching, and the person is standing on the sand and they're watching you drown. But because of how many times you've pulled yourself out of that water, they don't reach their hand in because they just assume and think that you have it. And it's like some of the people who present themselves as having it all together, as always being able to fix it, as, being the number one in their children's lives. We are actually the weakest people on the inside. We have this survival mechanism. We are out there. Don't wait for us to ask, because we're not going to. We don't want to burden you with, hey, can you help me? We need you to come to us and say, you know what, I see that you're struggling and I'm here with you. And it could be as simple as that. Let us sit in this darkness together, because I know you can pull yourself out. But I'm going to sit here with you until you're ready to do that, because we're so alone. We're so alone.
It can be a lonely, crazy world that anybody has to go through the things that you've gone through. I mean, we all have our own stories to share, and that you shared yours is quite phenomenal, because most people going through even half of that would tend to keep themselves rather closed off and try to work out things on their own. And it's hard. It can be done, but it's hard. I mean, it's always easier when you get a little help from those around you, so that you've had the courage to get that first step done. It's huge. Hopefully anyone seeing this can find some encouragement, some support from this, and pull themselves through their own issues.
And that's one of the reasons that I'm here, is because it's very, very easy to get caught up in this behind closed doors. I need to make sure that I have it together. I have to solve this problem alone. I mean, I have created my own demise in a lot of the things that I've gone through, in the sense that I am afraid to reach out. So I tuck myself away, I build my bricks, I get my plan together, and I put it out. And as soon as I step out my front door, That's the only thing people are seeing. They're not seeing my struggle. They're not seeing my efforts. They're not seeing my hard work. And I wish that they would come in, but I also need to do a better job at reaching out. And that's one of the reasons that I came here, is because I need to do a better job at saying, I don't have to handle this today. And I need you, somebody, anybody, I need you just to be here with me and be able to be vulnerable and understand that it's okay, because it is okay to be vulnerable. And in today's day, where, you know, everybody's being so careful about how they behave and how they talk and where we go and what we do, and trying to, you know, raise all of this awareness. And I'm sitting here like I'm struggling and I'm afraid, when the world in some areas is literally saying, hey, you can tell me. Like, I need to get better at that, for sure.
I think the whole world has a bit to catch up, because on that topic that you just said, you know, everyone's always tiptoeing around everything and trying not to offend and everything else. The world, in my perspective, has kind of gotten in that aspect a little bit soft and detached from reality, because life isn't always easy, happy, cheery. Life was about kind of getting through the hardships and learning how to pick yourself up and helping those around you pick up again and continue on through the struggle, the obstacles, the difficulties, you know, not beaten down and walking past those that are having a hard time. So
yeah,
that
exactly.
you can make that kind of relation. Hopefully a few more audience members out there can see that, you know, it's not always just you. It takes a group effort for anyone to get through all of the nonsense in this world today. So hopefully we all get a few things together, find those that are really out there to help you, and give a hand to them too and need it, because we're all going to drown on our own.
Yep, that's true.
In my opinion, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having a little chat. We won't keep our viewers too long, because status quo nowadays is short attention span.
Yes.
I'm probably going to lose mine soon. So,
That's okay.
on a good note and a quick last, thanks you for coming in, and thanks for sitting down with us on this little chat, and we'll see you again on the next little interview.
All right. Thank you.